Hi, everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome back to our Monday night little chat here, Fertility Care from Everywhere. I am one of the nurses here at CNY Fertility. I work exclusively on the global travel team. And so this Monday night chat is all about you as a travel client. So you're welcome, obviously, if you're not a travel client, you're more than welcome to watch and look things up. And I think tonight's topics will potentially have, I think they apply to everybody, but more so to our travel clients. So while we wait for some folks to join, we will just kind of go over a couple. There's lots of you that are going to come back and replay, but as you join, I started this last week and I don't know, I didn't think of it sooner, but tell me where you're from. So drop in the comments a hello and tell me where you're from. I'm really excited. I get really excited about the breadth of the people, the clients that we're able to help here with all that we do. And so it was a lot of fun last week to see everybody comment where they were from. So Katie says is from Georgia. Angie, we did talk today. That's so fun. So Angie's from Sacramento. We've got, oh my, okay. Wow. Y'all are coming in quick here. Perfect. So we've got Michigan, Ontario, McAllen, Texas, Hinesville, Georgia, a couple of Georgias here. New Orleans, Brandy, I think you were with us last week. From Indiana, but live at Fort Drum, Pittsburgh. Awesome. Fort Worth. Cool. You guys, we got people from everywhere, from coast to coast, Tennessee, some more Georgia, Long Island, Kansas City. Yay. So exciting. Well, hello to everyone. That's why we call it Fertility Care from Everywhere, because we really have a unique a business model, if you will, for lack of a better term. We can offer you awesome, high quality fertility care at a fraction of the price of pretty much anywhere else. And you're able to, that is including travel costs. So when you factor in flights, hotel, all of the things that go with the process, we're still a fraction of the cost. And so we love that we're able to do that. And not only are we able to offer this low cost, but I think it's of a big benefit to you to be able to do your monitoring and your testing and things like that at home. Anna, real quick, I have to answer this because I love the pregnancy stuff. You are so amazing. Oh, thank you. Question for you. Beta is at 3,500. Beta ultrasound today. Show gestational sac and yolk sac. Yay! 5. Yes, that's totally normal. 5 weeks, 2 days. You're really 5 weeks, 5 days. Early obstetrical ultrasound, depending on the machine, is typically plus or minus about 5 or 6 days. So we don't consider your sizes. So we have something called sizes versus dates. So the size being the measurement of either the gestational sac or the baby itself versus your dates. What should you be? And so early obstetrical ultrasound is always plus or minus 5 or 6 days. So that is perfect. That's so exciting. And I'm so excited for you. I think if I remember correctly, last week you were here really enough. So I'm noticing that my internet connection is a little rough right now. So if I cut in and out, I'm sorry. I'm still trying to get all of this stuff down to make sure that I can give you guys nice clear show here. So oh yay, Idaho, Rochester. So Isabel, you probably monitor in our Rochester office, which is completely awesome. Brandy, this is a really good statement because it is something that we find a lot. So it gets awkward to monitor to places you've already gone. Yes, it does. I can completely empathize with that. So much so that I sometimes will tell patients, oops, sorry, I was around last week. Yes, I'm every week. Yes, you are, my friend. You are a faithful watcher. I appreciate that. But yeah, so back to Brandy. It definitely can get awkward to monitor at those places. But what I encourage clients to do is just to be honest and to just say, you guys were, but it's a matter of whether or not we can afford it. And unfortunately, we're having to go out of state because that's where we can afford. Do we have a list of places? We do. If you go to cnyfertility.com/travel, there is what's called an affiliate monitoring map. And that map has places that other clients have used. Now, we are doing our best to try to keep up keep up with that. So every now and then somebody will tell us through the patient portal, oh, I called XYZ facility in Michigan and they don't, they can't help me. I'm so sorry. We'll take that off because we are doing our best to keep up with that. But I always, always, always recommend, yes, if you can monitor at a fertility clinic without it being awkward and without it being, whatever, then great. But you can also, most places, no matter how big or small your town is, most places have a hospital of some kind. And most people don't know this, but you can go in on an outpatient basis to a hospital and get an ultrasound if you bring a doctor's order. Now, sometimes it gets a little bit complicated in terms of, will they take an out-of-state order? And, we know that type of stuff pops up. But ultimately, diagnostic imaging facilities, if you just type into Google diagnostic imaging facilities near me, or put your zip code in, that's a great way to get started. But also, every single one of you watching this feed needs an OBGYN. You're going to get pregnant. So if you don't have an OBGYN, you have no resource for if something crops up and you need somebody right in front of you to help you. And so if you're watching this and you're in a cycle, you're planning a cycle, you just did a cycle, honest to goodness, you need an OB. Get yourself an OB. And most OBs are willing to do monitoring for you. You can try your OB, you can try diagnostic imaging facilities. You can even get on your insurance company's website. Even though they might not pay for it, you can still get an idea in your area that might be available to help with the monitoring. So check the affiliate monitoring map at the bottom of our website, cnyfertility.com/travel. And at the very bottom, there's this affiliate monitoring map. That's a jumping off point. Your OB-GYN is an option, and diagnostic imaging facilities near you. If you type that into Google, that's another great option. And, somebody has mentioned something about being able to afford other places. You know what, Anne, that's a huge, huge consideration because it's insane what some of these places will charge you for an ultrasound. And so I recommend, there's a lot of waiting that goes on in fertility treatment, and it's not fun. But I recommend using that time wisely. And so, for example, when you have your new patient consultation with us, it's going to be usually a couple weeks. We ebb and flow. Sometimes it's a couple days. Sometimes it's up to 2 to 3 weeks. It just depends on the time of year and how many new patients we're getting. But there's going to be some type of wait. And so use that time to establish a monitoring facility. I always recommend, and I know it's easier said than done, but I always recommend trying to have a backup facility as well. So again, most places, no matter how big or small the town that you live in is, most places are going to have a diagnostic imaging facility, and they're going to have some type of hospital option, an outpatient radiology clinic or something like that. So it's always good to have a couple of options, because one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is the importance of following our guidance. And so we'll get to that in just a second. But if we say, okay, you need to go on Friday for an ultrasound, and you independently, let you call your ultrasound facility and they can't get you in Friday, but they can get you in Thursday. You're like, okay, I'll go Thursday. What is the problem with that? So this is not something that you should intuitively know, but I want to explain it because I really want to help highlight the importance of truly following our guidance. Okay. So the importance of going on the day so we'll give you a physical order that you'll print out from your CNY Fertility patient portal, and you're going to take that order to wherever is going to do your monitoring. If you're going to do blood work and ultrasound at 2 different facilities, which is pretty common, most people do them at different facilities, you're going to print out 2 copies. Some places like to get squirrely about, well, we don't do ultrasound. No problem. Draw 1 line through it, write the word decline, just do the labs, please. But in any case, you're going to take those orders, and off of those orders, the facility is going to perform the test and send us the results. Well, if we're not expecting your results to come in on Thursday, we told you to go Friday, You have an order for Friday, but you went on Thursday, but didn't get you in. We get that, but we also then don't have a dedicated nurse assigned to you to help you with those results on a Thursday. So for example, today, I don't know, maybe 5, 10, 15, maybe patients, I think it was probably more like around 10. We got, word from our wonderful results team. And those are the ladies that track down all of your results from all of your facilities all across the country, said, oh, so-and-so was supposed to go to tomorrow, but went today. And the problem with that is twofold. One, now today, I don't have a nurse assigned to your care. Most of our nurses are so very dedicated to what we do here that many of them right now are logged in to their computers looking up their cases for tomorrow because they want to do their best to understand you as an individual. And because we do really pride ourselves on providing individualized care, I don't want to just call Anna, for example, and say, here's what we're doing without understanding where you've come from and what your journey has been thus far. And every now and then we very well might, stick our foot in our mouth and not realize something that we maybe should. But help us help you. Okay. Help us help you. So by going the day we advise you to go, that means that you have a dedicated nurse assigned to your care for Friday, who will Thursday night or very early Friday morning will look through your chart, familiarize herself with everything that you've done and what kind of cycle you're in, et cetera, and we'll be ready and waiting for those results to come in so that we can give you the right information, the right plan. So it's really, really important. And again, we know stuff comes up last minute. We totally know that. But at the end of the day, do your darndest to go whatever day we advise you to go. Because again, there is a method to our madness. No one else is doing what we are doing here at CNY Fertility with traveling, with travel clients, travel patients. I really don't know of any other even medical program in the country that's doing the volume of people traveling from so far away for care. But because it's a big, huge ship that we're running, we want to make sure that we have the available staff to give you the care that you need and that you deserve. And also, it's important to recognize that most of infertility treatment or infertility care in general is very much based on real-time data. And so for those of you, and I know you're out there, it's totally fine, but for those of you who have never read through your global travel packet, if you've been our patient for more than a week, you have in your patient portal, go look. It's under, I believe it loads under the tab patient instructions, but it is a whole packet of information all about our process and how we try to make things work very smoothly for you. But as a part of that process, or as a part of that packet, rather, excuse me, I'm going to crack open some water. As a part in that packet is a global travel agreement. And basically that agreement states, and I actually told a client about this the other day and she was really surprised. And it's okay. It's a lot of information, but that packet, we brainstormed a couple of years ago and we put that packet together for you. We put that packet together based on the many, many questions and the things that tend to come up over and over and over again. So we put that package together with you in mind to try to ease some of your concerns, to try to demystify some of the processes that we have. But it's always such a mistake drinking seltzer water while doing this because it always bubbles back up, but that's okay. But as a part of that global travel agreement, it actually states that you agree to have all of your testing, meaning your ultrasound, your labs, for whatever day we tell you, that you agree to have those done by 9:30 Eastern time. And so there's a reason for that. There truly is a reason for everything we do, every process that we have. And one of the many things I love about working here at CNY Fertility is that we really are so open and we really embrace change. So anything that we can do to make our process easier on you, just again, because we know how tough this all is in general. And so we really do try to do everything we can to make it easier for you. But the reason why we ask you to complete all of your testing by 9:30 a.m. is so that we can get same day results. So I want you to picture a situation where you are waiting on, let's say, 200 patients' results, and they all come in at 4:00. We cannot possibly give all 200 clients their plan, their instructions in an hour's time and do it to the quality that we want to do it. See, there it came back. I told you. So we really, we get it. You have a life. Life does not stop for you to pursue fertility treatment, but truly and completely, it is so important for you to move heaven and earth to have your testing done in the morning. I know for many of our West Coast clients, 9:30 a.m. is 6:30 a.m. Pacific. It's not possible, for most of you. But do everything you can, even if that's you maybe your ultrasound facility can't see you till 11:30, but you can get in for your blood work nice and early. There's definitely things that you can do to get the ball moving, because what ultimately is so frustrating, not just for us, but for you, is when you do go late, we don't get results same day. And then the next day when we do get the results, we're kind of behind the 8 ball because those results aren't timely anymore. They're not real time. And so in order for you to set yourself up for the very best cycle possible, part of that involves going early, because we need to get those results timely, same day. A part of that global travel agreement is that the results are due. I think it's chopping in and out. I apologize, but we know that that's not easy to do, especially when you're trying to carry on the rest of your life. But you're doing your part on monitoring nice and early helps us make real-time decisions that are going to make sure that you have the very, very best cycle possible, the most successful cycle possible. When we're constantly behind the 8 ball, there's things that happen that had we known, the day before what those results were going to be, we might have been able to do something different. And so the importance of really going the day you're supposed to go. And if you can't, if you send us a message to the patient portal and we say, okay, great, we want you to go for your baseline on Thursday, and you can't get in till Friday, or you can't get in Thursday, but you can get in Wednesday, just let us know that ahead of time. So try to give us at least a day ahead. So even if it's not till 4:00 the day before, try to give us as much advance notice as you possibly can, so that we can rearrange staffing on our side to make sure that you get a dedicated nurse for the day who's going to be available to help you with those results, with your plan, etc. Because that's just so important. If we don't have that, those resources, then you're not getting the best that we have to offer. And we want everybody to have the very best that we have to offer. And part of that is sort of following those guidances to have that testing done nice and early. Again, I get that it's tough. Everybody has jobs, but most places, depending, but a lot of places you can file for intermittent FMLA, basically to get time off covered. We know it's a lot of appointments, but it is a pretty short period in the grand scheme of things that, not going early, not getting us those results same day is only hurting you. And we want to make sure that we can give you our very best. And part of us giving you our very best is us getting those results by 2:30 the same day. And again, we know stuff happens, The more you can set up your cycle in the beginning, make a friend. I always say, make a friend at your facility, whether it's the office manager, whether it's one of the front desk staff members. Make a friend, make a personal connection with somebody. Explain to them why you're doing this and why it's so important to you, and let them know that anything that you can do to help facilitate getting your results over to us in a timely fashion, you're more than welcome, or you're more than happy to do. We offer, as a part of our every requisition, so the orders that we place in your portal, we offer, there's a little worksheet on the second page. So even if, and I get it, a lot of places they refuse, even though it's your uterus, it's your ovaries, they refuse to tell you anything. And we get that. But a lot of places will tell you, or you can, just try to be, observant and listen. And so that worksheet we develop, that places will tell you, some places will tell you what your follicle sizes are. And we can take verbal information. If you're in a transfer cycle, the most important thing we need to know is how thick or thin is your lining. If you can even gather that information. If you can gather, sometimes if you can just keep your ear out for the largest follicle you have on each side, if you're in an IVF cycle, if for some reason someday you have to get scheduled late, and again, we understand those things happen from time to time. But as a general rule, if you're going nice and early, we're going to get those results. We're not going to have to guess. We're not going to have to extrapolate data. But in the off chance once in a while that you do get stuck with a late appointment, and again, that's another really good reason to have a backup facility, right? Is because let's say your solid facility you normally go to can only get you in at 4:30 on Friday. That's going to be a real problem, because we are very unlikely to get results even by Saturday before we close. Most of your facilities aren't open on Saturday. And so if we scramble, we don't get that report by Friday, we're stuck. Now we're guessing. So not only did you pay, you took time off of work, or you took time away from your family or whatever, you paid for this, but now those results don't even give us what we needed. And that really is a bummer for everybody involved too. And so where was I going with that? I think I was saying, oh, right. So if there is the opportunity for you to gather any information, and again, that's kind of where making a friend, wherever it is that you go, again, receptionist, check-in desk, office manager, one of the medical assistants, one of the nurses, anybody, you can make a personal connection. They'll feel that desire to make sure that we get your results on time, because now they're rooting for you. A patient recently told me that she was flying to CNY for her transfer, and she shared with the flight attendant what she was going for. And the flight attendant threw, pulled out all the stop process and what we're going through. But I think more people want to support us than we even realize. And so, and it can never hurt to make a friend anywhere. So I always say, make a friend at your monitoring facility, because there are many times that person can help facilitate getting your results to us in a timely fashion. So, see, Stephanie, she says that package was very helpful. She was talking about the global travel packet. So that's your assignment for tonight. If you have not read your global travel packet, go get on board with that. Make sure you read that, because there's so much helpful information in there. Let's see here. Couple of questions I think that were pertinent before we get too far. So Anna, girlfriend, do not let other people's numbers influence you. Who cares if someone else, but you said something about you see a lot of people whose betas are over 5,000 at this point. Yeah, here we go. Is it concerning that it's only 3,500? No, it is not. What is more, number itself is the pattern with which that number rises. And so please don't let other people's numbers steal your joy. You are doing great. You are right where you should be. And so honestly, you just keep going. You're doing really, really awesome. Let's see here. And I only trust me. Our nurses are wonderful. We will all take great care of you. So, so you truly can. I would trust every single one of the global travel nurses. And again, I think I said something like this last week about the doctors, and then I said to myself, well, everyone might say, well, of course you wouldn't say on live Facebook if you wouldn't trust people, but I truly mean that I would trust every one of our nurses to help with the cycle. And it's always important, and I tell patients all the time, over communicate. If you have a gut feeling that something doesn't sound right, if you've ever talked to me on the phone, I say this a lot too, that there's 100 different ways to get from New York to LA. And just because you see different things along the way, depending on the route you take, it doesn't mean that you're not going to eventually get there. And fertility is especially tough because there are a million different ways to get from point A to point B. And we don't always know which way is going to work for you. And just because I might give you one piece of advice doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong. It just means that there really are so many different ways to get through this process. And so, if you have a gut feeling that you want more information, you just and I know that makes it hard, because we all tend to think more in a black and white fashion in terms of it's this way or it's that way. But there's so much gray area in fertility treatment, that there are so many different ways to do what we do. So let's see here. We'll talk a little bit more about the importance of following our guidances. So Josie says, does CMI have any more plans to expand to any more cities? Josie, if we could, we would be in every city in the country. We really are. We have grown by leaps and bounds, even in the 3 years that I've been here. And so I don't know of any specifics on like the next city that we're looking at. But I know that Dr. Kiltz's heart's desire is to bring affordable fertility care to everyone he possibly can. So I'm sure that there are plans to expand to more cities. I am sure. Tika, good question. If you bring your own donor to CNY, do you get updates as to the donor's progress during stimulation, fresh transfer? Do you get to have an input into their protocol? Well, everything we do here, we take into account your input. So protocols are designed by the providers, and they're designed based on medical data that is brought to the table. And so, if you're bringing your own donor, first of all, if you're bringing your own donor, you probably know that person. So you guys would be probably in communication throughout the cycle as it is. Yes, absolutely. Whether you use one of our donors, an outside agency donor, somebody you know as a known donor, you're absolutely going to get up along the process. And if there's things that you do or don't want to see happen in the cycle, we're going to do our best to accommodate those things. Again, protocols are designed by the physician. Because they're the ones that have the protocol your donor is going to do best on. But you absolutely will have an input into that. You're the intended mother. So it very much matters to us to make sure that you are included in the process. I couldn't dream of it being any other way. So yes, absolutely. Other questions? Michaela, ultrasound today, 5 weeks, 3 days. They didn't see anything. Is this normal? Should I be concerned? At 5 weeks, 3 days, it's a real toss up. Sometimes you're going to see something, sometimes you're not. It does depend. Typically, HCG levels need to be somewhere around the 2,000 mark to be able to see a gestational sac in the uterus. But ultimately, at 5 weeks, 3 days, I would not get super concerned about it one way or another. I mean, I know that's much easier said than done, but ultimately, I don't know that you should look for a different monitoring clinic. But at 5 weeks, 3 days, it's early. It is early. And so, I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't get too worried just yet, even though I definitely understand that that's easier said than done. Stephanie, this is a good question, a really, really good question. I'm so glad you brought it up. Can one have part remote and part in-office monitoring? So she says, to be specific, have the first 2 to 3 weeks of monitoring in our home state, and the last week before retrieval at CNY. Yes. Now, how that works with cost, I don't know. I see this every week. I don't do anything with cost. I leave that to our wonderful, wonderful financial team. But that is absolutely an option. So now you said the first 2 to 3 weeks of monitoring, and then the last week, you would never really monitor for 4 weeks. So what I think is best for somebody who would like to do some of their monitoring with us is typically to do all of your preconception testing at home. So do all of that locally to you. So your preconception labs, your HSG, your SHG, those preconception tests that we order, do all of that at home. And then even potentially plan on, if you have nice regular menstrual cycles. Now, a menstrual cycle is not required to start a treatment cycle. Every now and then, whether or not you have a period, it might still be appropriate for you to get started. But let's just talk as if you have regular menstrual cycles. What you can do is you can plan based on your menstrual cycle. You can plan to do just your baseline at home. So cycle day 2, 3, 4, do that ultrasound and lab work at home, but then plan for your days 6, 8, and 10 of stimulation, that part of the monitoring, and then the time from your retrieval to your fresh transfer, if that's your plan. Spend that time here with us at CNY Fertility. So you can absolutely do a combination of in-house monitoring, meaning at one of our facilities, and remote monitoring. As far as cost, I'm not too sure how that works. I know any monitoring you do outside, you would pay the outside facility, but definitely check in with one of our financial team members on the logistics of doing some of it in-house. So Heather, this is a really good to understand that it's not, oops, where did you go? Hold on. Where did your question go? There you go. So Heather says, I have Kaiser, but it's sometimes hard to get an appointment for imaging last minute. So, and if I will say, if there's any, depending on what day you go, if there's any visit that is kind of livable, if it's last minute, it's that baseline appointment. Again, unless you try to go cycle day 5, most of what we do here, we try to start by day like 5 or 6. And so if you're going day 5 and you're going late, that really makes it tough, because then, we don't know, should we get you started? Should we, tomorrow's day 7. But for the most part, if you're day 2 or 3 and you're able to get Kaiser can see you, but not till 4 o'clock, that's a situation where we could probably give you next day information or next day plans and instructions without it affecting your cycle too much. But you're going to get at your baseline, whether it's for your IVF cycle, your IUI cycle, or your FET cycle, you're going to get your next monitoring dates at your baseline. So let's use today as a stepping point or starting point. So let's say today you were cycle day 3 and you went in for baselines for IVF, and we called you and we said, okay, you're going to start your medications on Wednesday. A lot of people don't realize this, but like I said, this is a huge operation that we have going on here. And so we need to make sure that when you are ready for your retrieval or your transfer or your IUI or whatever the case may be, we need to make sure that we're ready for you. And so can you imagine if everybody started medications on the same day, what would happen in our OR on retrieval day? There would be far, far more retrievals than we have nurses and doctors to perform. So we stagger and spread our start dates out to make sure that you're going to have a doctor, an anesthesiologist, nurses, and staff to care for you on the day of your retrieval. So let's say today you went in for baselines. We said, okay, you're going to start meds on Wednesday or Thursday. Part of your plan that you're going to get at baseline is your next dates for monitoring. So if you're doing IVF, you should be getting dates for at least your next 2 monitoring visits. So let's say you were cycle day 2 today. Let's say you start meds on Wednesday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'd probably go in for monitoring next week on Monday and Wednesday, maybe Friday. So we're going to issue you written orders for that today. That way you can call Kaiser and say, I really need to get in on these dates. And then ultimately, that's why having a backup facility can sometimes help, because we get it. This is a big logistical undertaking for you and for us. And so we all have to put on our creative thinking hats and kind of figure out, because having that backup facility can be a godsend, because maybe Kaiser, one of those dates can't get you in until 3:00, but you're able to call your backup facility and they're like, no, we can see you at 9, or we can see you at 8. And so we get it. We know it's sometimes hard to get an appointment at the last minute. We all have to do the very best we can with what we can. But that, again, comes back to us doing the best we can. And sometimes it's, we have clients that will just only always go after work. They'll go at 4:30 or 5:00. And what we see is it does negatively affect cycles because we're not getting that real-time data. And so then we don't know, maybe we don't get your results till tomorrow, but once we get them, we go, oh goodness, really would have been best to trigger her last night. We don't have that option anymore. And so we get it. We know it's hard to get a last minute appointment sometimes. At least for the monitoring visits, you will have some knowledge of when those will be. Some people, especially because it's such a big undertaking to travel all this way, some people will ask, and we allow it, and as long as it's medically necessary or medically appropriate. But some people will use birth control pills to regulate their cycle so that they can actually plan the dates out. Most people will be what's considered baseline, or their ovaries will be quiet and at baseline, even if they didn't start a period necessarily. But most people, if you take usually around, and birth control pills are not appropriate for everybody. There's many reasons why we don't use them, but sometimes they can be helpful, especially for when you're traveling, to time everything out. Because what we can do is you can take 2 or 3 weeks of birth control pills, and again, not appropriate for everybody, but you can expect your ovaries to be kind of baseline about 4 days after you take the last pill. And then you could basically plan out, okay, if I'm going to be baseline, that we would consider cycle day 1 or baseline day. I could go this day for baselines. My monitorings would be days 6, 8, and 10. So those dates would fall here. We can absolutely do that. And we do help a lot of people plan their cycles in that fashion. Teachers, different, people who have a difficult time getting off of work for any number of reasons. I mean, it's tough to get this time off. It really is. But there's a number of things we can do. If you communicate with us, there's a number of things we can do on our end to try to help sort of estimate those days that you might monitor and that type of thing. So definitely understand it's hard. But ultimately we all, like I said, we have to do the best we can with what we have. So Brooke says, going in for baseline tomorrow to see where my lining is. Yay! Clearance from oncologist. Well, that doesn't sound happy. So lots of prayers for that. But you weren't getting a period because of the meds you were on. Okay, makes sense. And like I said, you might be baseline tomorrow. So there's a fair chance, a lot of people will call and say, all right, I haven't gotten a period. We need to induce one. And they'll go in for monitoring or baselines or whatever you want to call it. And their body's at baseline. And we're like, okay, let's get started. A menstrual period, that's the kind of the more old school way of thinking, that you must have a menstrual period to start a treatment cycle. And that's not necessarily true. For our PCOS clients who maybe you don't get a period, but maybe once every four months or something like that. Can you imagine if we had to wait on your own natural period to start a cycle? That would be miserable. So there's plenty of times that we're able to send you in and kind of take a look and say, well, you haven't had a period. we can start. So here's hoping that that's your case for you tomorrow, Brooke. Okay. Next question. Oh, before I forget, because I tend to talk and then forget some things. The other thing I wanted to talk about before I answer, and then I'll answer the rest of your questions for the remainder of the time. But something else I wanted to talk about, I wanted to share, and I may have shared this example on here before, but with the advent of social media, the internet, support groups, etc., there's a lot more information at our disposal than maybe we would have had 20 years ago. And that's a good thing. That's a very, very good thing to have information at our fingertips. But I think it's also really, really, really important to recognize that you came to us for our expertise. If you could have gotten pregnant by Googling and doing your own treatment cycle, you would have. But you have come to us for a reason, and that is because collectively, and I'm going to make a number up, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the 25 years since CNY Fertility has existed, I wouldn't be surprised if there's I'm throwing out a number, but we have a lot of collective years of experience doing what we do. And the longer that you're in this field, the more you learn the nuances of the hormone levels and different trigger medications and follicle sizes and when to trigger. And there's so much information that goes into protocols and treatment plans that it's very difficult to get a solid medical opinion from a Facebook group or from the internet. Even I've spoken about this before with you guys that I fight a pretty big medical battle of my own. And even I, with being a nurse, with having had this problem for 25 years plus, I still know that I'm not going to be able to get a solid medical opinion from a Facebook group or an internet article. For one, if you've ever done any type of research, academic research, you know that you can pretty much find something to support your theory. It might not be very solid, but typically you can find data or you can find articles that kind of support whatever it is that you're trying to prove. But I want to give this example. I had a client once years ago who had made the decision to use donor eggs, and she had a family member that lived in a different country. And that family member was kind enough to agree to donate eggs to this patient. And so that family member came from a very, very long way away from the other side of the world and did a donor cycle. And the couple ended up, the intended mother and intended father ended up with two genetically normal embryos. They chose to do the genetic testing PGT, and they ended up with these two genetically normal embryos. And so the egg donor, the family member, went back home, and the couple transferred. They had a wonderful first beta, second beta. Everything was wonderful, looking great. And as she was nearing her 8th week of pregnancy, she read online that progesterone, I find it hard to believe that this is what she saw, but in any case, that progesterone was not safe to be taken in pregnancy. And so she independently elected to stop her progesterone. And she, unfortunately, at 8 weeks, just shy of 8 weeks, lost her twins because she decided to take a piece of information in a vacuum and use that for a treatment decision. And I know many of you here, if you've ever done anything with fertility treatment, you go, oh my goodness, everyone knows, you don't just stop your progesterone. But it's the example is applicable to a lot of different things that we do here. And it's really important to have a mutual respect for the fact that we do collectively offer you many, 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 many years of experience. And so when in doubt, it's important to seek support from peers on Facebook. it is important to be empowered with your own knowledge and information. But we really, I like to stress the importance. And again, I take my own advice on this, because while I might have a theory about, what I'm going through, I suffer from a spinal fluid leak, and it's a very tricky, it's a tricky condition to have. There's not usually a slam dunk way to treat it. And in many ways, even though many of you know I've been through fertility treatment myself as well, much of my journey as a spinal fluid leak patient has taught me what you all go through as fertility patients. Because while I have been through treatment, I was a fertility nurse at the time, so I can't completely empathize with that desire to have knowledge and those types of things. But what I can tell you is, even when I happen upon an article or a thought, I always take that information to my doctor and to discuss the applicability of that to my situation. Because even as a nurse with many years of experience, I'm not a spinal fluid leak specialist. And so I know when to defer and when to run things by my providers. And look, we are probably the most open group of medical professionals you'll ever meet in terms of considering all kinds of different approaches and avenues to treatment. We love thinking outside the box. We love individualizing your treatment to you. But at the same time, it's so important to remember that there are so many nuances that go into your treatment cycle, that taking advice strictly from a support group online or an article that you read or a blog that you read can be catastrophic. And that would be in the instance that I gave of my former patient who lost her twins due to something she read online. And again, I say it more than anyone else, I totally understand and support the need for support. You all need support. But remember to separate support from medical advice. Because all too often I'll get a message through the patient portal where I've instructed a client to trigger tonight with 2,500 units of HCG and 1 Lupron, and to repeat that Lupron 12 hours later. And lo and behold, they write into the patient portal the next afternoon and say, oh, hey, I read on Facebook that you only need 1 Lupron, so I just took 1. Well, unfortunately, if you only trigger with 2,500 units of HCG, you must have that second Lupron for full luteinization, maturation, and availability of those follicles at retrieval. And so those are the type of little nuances that I say it's so important. And I know it's hard to put your trust in people that you've never met. I know it's hard to put your trust in people that you only talk to who you don't even know. And so, but at the same time, please, if you have ideas, if you have questions about your care, make sure you get that final decision or that final sort of thumbs up from us and not from anyone else, because you really are entrusting us with your care. And it's very rare that I ever get a question through the patient portal that I don't go investigate your chart thoroughly before I answer, because I can answer. And again, two of you could ask me the same question and the answer could be different for each of you based on your personal history. So that's my sort of last little bit of 2 cents about following our guidance. And again, I don't want it ever to sound like, you must listen to us. We're the bosses, because it's not like that at all. But it's out of a genuine and true desire to see you walk away and be discharged from CNY Fertility because you got what you came for. And that was a baby. That was an ongoing pregnancy. And we want that for you so very much. I definitely couldn't say as much as you do because, that's your journey. But we are truly in this with you together. And so don't leave us out of that. Okay, so I'll answer questions for the rest of the time that we have. excuse me, Victoria, I think you have asked this question a couple of times, probably hoping that I would answer it. But will you guys treat me? I have a pituitary tumor and acromegaly. It's controlled but on a higher normal level. Clomid and letrozole hasn't worked. Consultation is in January. It will move heaven and earth to help you. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is we don't turn people away unless it would be wholly unethical and 100% dangerous to you. We will do our best to treat you. So without knowing anything else about you except for what you put there, I'm pretty darn confident that we'll be able to help you. Okay. Heather Page says, can you talk about a thicker lining? What would be the plan to thin the lining? So what's the idea behind this? Sometimes you go and we want your lining to be thin, and sometimes you go and we want it to be thick. At your baseline, let's give this example, which is that if you plant a field full of something, some type of crop, and you harvest that crop, but you don't till that soil and remove that soil that was used to build that beautiful crop, and you just replant seeds, you're not going to get a very robust crop to grow, because that soil that's there, all those nutrients have been used up in the previous crop. So now let's use that and apply that to our cells. Your endometrial lining is like that soil, and each month it's building up in anticipation of accepting those seeds or accepting that embryo. And so if you aren't pregnant and you have a period, but you go in and your lining is pretty darn thick, we say, well, that's probably not very nutrient dense lining. Let's get rid of that lining. Let's try to get that old soil, that lining, to go away so that we're starting with nice, fresh, nutrient dense. Now, some people are just predisposed to a little bit thicker of a baseline lining. So some people will, every time they go in, the thinnest it'll ever be is 8, and we say, okay, that's fine. But typically we like to see it below 7, which tells us that you have, in fact, bled off all of last month's lining, and your body is ready to build up nice, new, fresh lining for the cycle. So if you go in for a baseline and your lining is too thick, and again, we're always going to tell you what your options are. Some people they choose to start anyway, and some people are successful. We're just going based off of the science behind it and the statistics and the research that shows that the very concept that I just explained is understandable by almost everybody. You don't want to plant seeds. So if your lining is too thick, the most common thing that we do is we sort of trick your body into having another period or a bleed. So every month, what causes you, if you do have regular normal menstrual cycles, what causes you to bleed? So your cycle day 1, you just had a bleed. Now you're going to grow a follicle. That follicle is going to ovulate. Once you ovulate, your body starts making progesterone in a quantity that's sufficient, or should be, if your body's working properly, that should be sufficient to support pregnancy. And when that progesterone or when your body doesn't achieve pregnancy, so implantation does not occur, that progesterone drops off. And it is the drop off of that progesterone that causes you to bleed. And so in a similar fashion, that's essentially what we do to get you to thin the lining, is we give you typically about 10 days of progesterone. It's taken in the form of a pill called Provera. And you take that for 10 days. And then when you stop it, it's that same concept of when your body made its own progesterone. It said, oh, we're not pregnant. The progesterone drops off. That caused you to bleed. The Provera does the exact same thing. So it then spurs your body to bleed again, thus shedding off all of that thick lining that we wanted to get rid of. Is it always successful? No. Maybe the thinnest you'll ever get is 8, but we won't know if we don't try. So if your lining is a little thick at baseline, the typical plan in the lining out is to use a medication called Provera. Emily, it's nice to see you too. You've been a travel patient for 3 years, and we've been great with details and help. I'm so happy to hear that. Let's see here. Rachel, this is a good question. You live in Mountain Standard Time. Clinics in your town don't open until 9 at the earliest. You know, again, we'll always do the best we can with whatever we have. As I said before, if we get everybody's results by 4 or 5 Eastern, we're going to have a really hard time getting you your plan and being able to spend that time with you that you should be deserving of. But if you're able to get in at 11 Eastern time, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be able to get results by 2 or 3. If there's a time we don't get them till 4, again, we're always going to do the very best we can with whatever we do get. But it is going to be a little tough if we're never going to be able to get your results until 4 or 5. So, but then we'll always do the best we can with what we get. Let's see here. Gosh, it's already been 55 minutes. I talk too much. Let's see if we can answer another question or two. Let's see here. So we answered that one. Let's see here. Baseline stat. All right, this is a good one because stuff happens. So Lee says, my baseline stat for transfer for FAT had a hiccup today. They got lost, unsure of the details, and didn't make it there cycle day 4. Yes, you can absolutely get them run again in the morning. Rarely, I would say relatively rarely, do baseline labs stop us from starting meds. And so the more important thing for baseline labs is to have something to compare those to. And so, for example, knowing what your baseline LH is important for transfer, because if you go back for your lining check and your LH is surging, that tells us we have a very limited window in which to start your progesterone and schedule your transfer. But if we don't have a baseline LH, we don't really know if that number is high for you or not high for you. So yeah, absolutely okay to go get them run stat again in the morning for sure. Because we do want results. There's a reason why we draw every single lab that we draw. And exactly that it was a hiccup, and those things do happen. So yeah, go get them drawn again in the morning, and hopefully that was kind of a one-time occurrence. Okay, let's see here. One final question, and then I will sign off for tonight. Let's see here. This is a good question. So Fallon is asking, I hope I said that right. Does LH fluctuate on a modified natural FET on letrozole? So real quick, a modified natural FET is one where we use your body's ovaries and ovulation to time the transfer. And so what we do is we use the letrozole typically to develop a follicle or 2 or 3. Once those follicles become mature, we trigger those follicles to ovulate. Remember what we talked about earlier? When you ovulate, what happens? Your body starts making some of its own progesterone. So absolutely LH fluctuates on a modified natural cycle. However, that's only if your body's doing what it's supposed to do. So modified natural FETs are not for everybody, because if you're super PCOS and your body's doesn't really ovulate on its own, then LH might be to blame, and LH might not fluctuate. If you get regular monthly cycles and you ovulate every month like clockwork, then yes, LH is going to fluctuate. In fact, we oftentimes plan the cycle based on when the LH surges. Some people want to do a completely natural FET and not even use a trigger, which I don't necessarily love those cycles because I think we're leaving too much up to chance. But in general, yes, your LH will fluctuate on a modified natural FET because what's happening? The letrozole is building a follicle. Letrozole works by raising your body's own output of FSH to spur those ovaries to do something. And then as those follicles become or near maturity, your LH should, and that's the key word is should, rise to tell your body it's time to ovulate. Not always will it. And that's why, again, modified natural cycles are not perfect for everybody, because if you're not a regular ovulator, now it still may work well, even if you don't ovulate on your own, as long as we use a trigger. But in general, if you do have typical regular monthly cycles, LH should rise with the development of a follicle as you near that ovulation point. So I hope that helped answer your question. Okay. Well, I have to throw this up there because it's such a nice thing to say. Jared says, we're late to this party, but hey, from the McGee's, thanks for being by far the best dang nurse out there. Well, thank you very much. I'm certainly not the best, but I'm certainly happy to help. And I do such every time, but it is the honor of my life to do what I do. And as hard as it is to walk through some of the awful things that this journey has to offer, it is humbling and it is a true honor to be a part of it with you. As I always say, none of us ever pictured this as how we were going to have our family. But it truly is an honor to be a part of all of your journeys. And with that, I will say goodnight. I love doing these videos. If you guys have ideas on other ideas that, if you have ideas on ideas, just on topics that might be helpful to talk about, definitely let me know. But with that, we'll say goodnight for now. If you have any questions specific to you, remember, send your questions through the patient portal to the travel team so that we can make sure that we're getting you the answer that is most appropriate in your situation. So with that said, I hope everybody has a great night and we'll see you. I always say either next week or the week after because you never know. All right. Have a great